Hello, everyone. This is Glenn Guyton, your cultural futurist and keynote speaker. Today, I want to talk about organizations. Now, many of you listening to this right now may be leaders of an organization. You may be a nonprofit leader, an association leader, and you're having some challenges. You're trying to make changes in your organization, but something is stopping you. What's stopping you? Well, you and your board may be talking about a number of things, a number of policy changes that are needed, a number of strategies that will help you get across the line. But I bet there's one thing that you're struggling with, and that's people. Now, one of the things that I like to say is I help organizations unlock the power of their people. And the trouble that I see with a lot of leaders and a lot of organizational boards is that we are afraid to make the people changes. It's easy to write new policies. It's easy to dream up creative and exciting strategies for how we're going to improve our work or how we're going to achieve our goals. But you know what's hard? People. Dealing with people is probably one of the hardest things that we can do as leaders. And it's probably one of the most rewarding things that we can do as leaders. But you know what? Like a mentor of mine used to say, Glenn, we are in the people business. And you are in the people business. And sometimes that's what makes change so hard, is because we are unwilling to change the people. Now, I've seen it over and over again with organizations that have been around for a while. They're stuck. They want to move forward. They have new and creative ideas that they want to implement, and the staff is ready to execute and move forward, and they can't because someone or some group of someone's is in the way. Is this a challenge for you? That you have great plans, you have a great team, but there is someone or something keeping you from moving forward? Like most organizations, you had a purpose, you had a goal that you wanted to accomplish, but then over time, things started to grow and creep and scope creep with your team or some long-term members or some long-term board members. And then when it's time for them to move on, you find yourself with this bloated and expanded mission that is kind of moved far beyond your original purpose. And now in these more challenging times when you have limited staff and limited resources, you want to scale back, but somehow the organization that you're responsible for has just grown into this unwieldy monstrosity. So what do? You want to make a change, but you know what's keeping you from doing that? It's the old guard, right? It's always the old guard, right? It's the people that have come before us and that they know how things should be done, how things ought to be done, and it's hard for us to move forward. And it's very challenging for many leaders because what are we afraid of? What are you afraid of when making those types of changes? Well, you are afraid of hidden power. That's something that we always have to be mindful of. Hidden power. Who has the hidden power in the organization? Again, it could be an old board member, some old, well-respected staff person or organizational leader that still wields a lot of influence in the organization. And you might be new. You and your team, if you are an executive, you may be new in this role, and you are afraid of what? The backlash. And that's reasonable. I mean, it is reasonable. There are office politics. We all have to play the game. But do you know what game you're playing? Do you want to play the game that you're playing? So there's a time when we have to look at the people that are hindering us. And there are a couple of things that you can do. I always believe that we need to honor the past. I think that's important for us to understand the history of our organizations, why we were created, and there has to be somewhat of a looking back at some of those things. But we can't be held hostage by the past, especially as times change, as culture changes, as cultural norms change, as access to resources change, we have to change with the times as leaders. And so we can honor the past, but we have to be able to move forward. And so there are a couple of things that you can do. First of all, you want to honor the people, board members, leaders that came before you, give them their props, their propers, if you will, so that you acknowledge what they've done, but set a vision for the future. Start setting a vision for the future and clearly communicate why you need to change now. Will there be some backlash? Yes, most definitely. But you are a leader for a reason. You have to be able to change, get your board on board with the changes that you want to make. If you are in an organization, make sure that you build you a good cadre of people, a support team, support staff that can help you deal with the political fallout of whatever change that you want to make. But I do think that part of good leadership is taking risk. Now, only you can calculate the risk. I'm just some guy on Instagram telling you my opinion, but I have been in leadership roles. I've led nonprofits. I've led in a number of other industries, and I've had to take risks as a leader. But part of taking risk is taking informed risk. So, know the rules, know the policies and procedures, but also know the history. Again, you can't move forward unless you look back some. Now, as a futurist, I want to know what's on the horizon. That's how I'm going to build my strategy. That's how I'm going to plan. I'm going to plan for some of the unforeseen things that will be coming in the future. I want to be ready. I want to be future ready, as some say. I want to mitigate risk, as some say. But still, it all comes down to the people resources that you have. You can do all of the future planning and predicting that you want, but if you don't have the human capital to move it forward, it's not going to happen. We still need human beings. I know we're thinking about AI and other shortcuts that can help us to accomplish our mission, but someone still has to push the button. Someone still has to program and test the algorithm. Someone needs to evaluate the product to make sure that it's within specs, that we're doing the right thing. And someone has to poll the people that we are serving, right? So it's the external people and the internal people that we have to think about. So change, again, change is hard, but we can't underestimate the impact of people on organizational change. Now, the other thing I find weird when I'm talking to organizational leaders is that, yes, legally, technically, corporations, organizations are entities, right? But they're not human beings. And sometimes we talk about these organizations and entity problems like people aren't creating the issues, right? Rules and bylaws and procedures don't cause any problems. It's how we execute them, how we interpret them, which causes the problems. It's uninformed board members and leaders who are focused more on the culture that they've created versus what the intent of the organization was when it was founded. So we have to take these things into consideration. It's the unwritten rules. How many of y'all are baseball fans out there? Baseball has so many unwritten rules, things that you should know that you shouldn't do on the baseball field, things that are offensive to the opposing team, but they aren't written down anywhere. And so that makes it challenging, especially as you have younger players who come from different cultural backgrounds. They don't know the unwritten rules. And that's how it is in our organization. So I would encourage you to learn the unwritten rules. Again, we're honoring the past. We're understanding our internal procedures and processes. We have to know them, and we have to understand the unwritten rules. Because culture, who is it, Peter Drucker, that says culture trumps strategy? Well, let me disagree. Now, he's probably a much greater philosopher, writer, business person, business mind than I am. But culture and strategy go hand in hand. You have to think about the culture in order to design the most effective strategy. Seth Godin has a great book on strategy. I would encourage you to read that if you haven't read that book. But we can't disconnect the people and the culture and the capacity of the organization from our strategy. Those are three things that have to be connected. What are my people resources? What are their skills? What's their capacity? What's the culture of the organization? Because even when people leave, something maintains that culture, right? There's this corporate mindset that stays, this corporate legacy that stays unless we get rid of everybody. There's a perception of a culture. And then we have to think about, what other changes do we need to make in regards to our strategy, right? How do we get these things? So you have your people, you have the organizational culture, and then you're going to create your strategy based on whatever the mission is of your organization. So think about those things as you plan, as you think about what's next, as you plan for the future, as you try to mitigate risk in the organization. There are a lot of factors at play. I've been a part of some organizations where people are still complaining about what the organization did to them 20 years ago. No joke. Hey, 20 years ago, the organization, the institution harmed me, and I can't move forward until this is resolved. And I think about this and think, like, 20 years ago, I wasn't even a part of this organization. 20 years ago, I was living in another state. None of the staff that were in place 20 years ago are here today. But that organizational culture somehow just continues to live on in the minds of people that had interactions with it. So we can't disconnect the people aspect of this from the changes that we want to make in our organization. So I hope that helps you as a leader today, understanding that you do have to deal with the people. I will say that even though there's some backlash, that backlash is a lot of times it's short-lived. People have short memories. People move on. Now, I'm saying that to tell you that there are a few people that will still hold on to these things for decades and decades and decades. That's okay. It's just part of leadership. It's part for the course. Make sure you treat people right. Understand why they feel the way they feel, or why they're holding on to something specific. You may find a way to honor them to help resolve the issue or the challenge or the concern that they have as you move on. So don't let that hinder you. For the most part, 99% of the people are going to be able to move on. They're going to forget about it. They're going to move on to something else. As long as you have a clear mission, as long as you can explain the changes, why the change is necessary, I think you'll do well. Again, my name is Glenn Geitson, helping you to unlock the power of your people. And hey, you know what? Better leaders get better results. So to every one of you leading the charge for a more effective and inclusive workplace, I leave you with this. Stay bold, stay inspired, but understand that the choices that we make today really creates the culture of tomorrow. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.